Sometimes the guy just needs a nudge.
What's he unboxing? What'd it be? I don't know. Shut up and see.
Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Now, as a longtime Stephen King collector, I am aware of different publishers and publications and artists and authors who are King affiliated, and they sometimes write books about Stephen King's works or trivia, and those are a lot of fun. But as is my experience, I have a trivia book, and I'm the only one who knows any of the things in it. And I'm the only one in my circle of friends who cares. So you can't really have trivia night by yourself. And so these things have always held some level of interest for me, but I have usually passed on them, admittedly, without putting too much thought into it. Well, recently I got an email from Dave Hinchberger, who is the owner, founder, editor over at Overlook Connection Press. I'm familiar with the press. Very cool stuff. They do these Glenn Chadbourne dust jackets. I had a few dust jackets. If you love a book and you read it a lot and you shelf it a lot and you take it down, and the dust jacket could get wear and tear on it. It could get torn up, especially if you're a 17-year-old goober who doesn't know how to take care of his things yet. And so the library that has followed me since I was 15 has some volumes on it that needed new dust jackets. And I discovered Overlook Connection Press, and Glenn Chadbourne does trade edition hardcover dust jackets for all the Stephen King books with new art. And it's always very cool. And they're all signed by Glenn Chadbourne with new dust jacket copy on there and a seal of authenticity, or a gold seal, a stamp. So I got one for it, and I got one for The Stand, the unabridged edition. I also got a couple of Jack Ketchum books from Overlook Connection Press, so I was well aware of what they do. Hadn't had really the opportunity to purchase from them in a while. I hadn't had too many Stephen King dust jackets that I wanted to replace. Although as I look now, I'm reconsidering. Some of these look kind of old, and it's a great way to protect the original dust jackets because these dust jackets go right over. Anyway, the subject of the email that Dave sent over was, hey, I was wondering if you'd like to see or have our newest annual. The theme is the 40th anniversary. And because that is one of my absolute favorite Stephen King books, and it's meant a lot to me. It's the first hardcover Stephen King book I ever read. My immediate answer was yes. I had some knowledge of these annuals and these calendars from Overlook Connection Press, but again, I passed on them really without thinking too much about it. Just like, okay, those seem cool. Those are nice to have and not necessarily a mandatory in my collection. Well, he sent them, and by them, I mean he sent me the Stephen King annual from 2025 and the new one from 2026, as well as the two separate Stephen King calendars from 25 and 26. I'll get into what all that means because I was seriously confused when he sent me the letter and the email, and I went to the website to see what was what. And having the books in hand, it all makes sense. It's abundantly clear. But I wanted to share them with you on the channel. If you're a Stephen King fan, I got to say these things are a little bit more than nice to have. And I'll show them to you. So first up, this is the 2026 annual. I believe these come out before the year because inside is a calendar. But inside you'll see it is loaded with articles and tidbits about it. I got to say, as I was sitting here flipping through it, I was brought back to the days of the magazine. Do you remember magazines? Magazines were just so flippable. I had a subscription to Twilight Zone magazine and Fangoria back in the day, and I just love the feeling of flipping. You don't know what you're going to read. You're just kind of bouncing around from article to article, and sometimes your eyes will get snagged on a certain feature, and you'll start digging in, and you'll learn a little something. You get a lot of eye candy in there. For example, this art that inspired or was used in the creation of Welcome to Derry. It's badass. I don't know, and I'm going to have to look at that to see where, if anywhere, I can get these pieces, because I would love to hang those up somewhere on my very limited wall space. But that's kind of how it felt. There's all these articles. There's an article from a guy talking about living in the town where the It movies were filmed, and how it gave him a new appreciation for the place he grew up in, and he saw it with new eyes. There are a number of other articles. There's some familiar names like Noah Mitchell and Diana Petroff, who are very active in the collector community with regards to Stephen King and Fantasia Press and other circles, other ponds I swim in. And they wrote a couple articles. There's an article in here from Keelan Patrick Burke that I'm excited to read. He's a stellar dude, and he talks about Pet Cemetery, exhuming the corpse. So some Keelan Patrick Burke in here. There's all kinds of little advertisements for other books that you might not be aware of that you can buy related to Stephen King. And this is where the experts in the community really comes alive. Kevin Quigley is a familiar Stephen King expert name. He's in here. Glenn Chadbourne also has a piece in here. Excited to hear his thoughts because I've seen all his art. And a lot of other contributors with really interesting takes on Stephen King's works. Now, I will say, so this is the annual, and it has a calendar in here, which I'll show you briefly. It goes weekly. It's a weekly calendar, and every week has a new piece of either Stephen King trivia or a movie quote or some insight into a Stephen King work. And that is very cool, but they also do a separate calendar, so it's bound all by itself, and it has different artwork. So it's all Glenn Chadbourne. You have the front and then the back. Victims of Pennywise floating in the deadlights. And then the calendar is different artwork and Pennywise on a motorcycle, which, of course, is an homage to the the cover of the 2025 calendar. So you got that right, and it has everything that's in the annual with regards to the calendar, as well as a couple of the articles. Not as many. It's not as comprehensive. Cool end papers. But the reason in the letter I got from Overlook Connection Press, the reason they separated it is because they used to just do the calendar, and then it grew and grew and grew into the annual. But people didn't want to write in the annual, so they separated it into a calendar and an annual. And if you want to look at it this way, the annual has everything, and the calendar just has the calendar with a few articles, but not, again, just it's an incomplete annual. So there's a lot of overlap, but if you want everything, you should get the annual. But if you want to write in it, like your calendar, well, I have to have my evil twin, my evil co-joined twin removed, and I got to do that on Tuesday, July 7th. And so you'll want to write that down because it's a pretty important doctor's appointment, because that co-joined evil twin is probably chewing on you when you sleep, and it's very uncomfortable, and he says foul things to all your friends and neighbors. So you have to get that guy chopped off. So you want to write it down, and you want to write it in your Stephen King calendar. I will say I'm very confused by that customer feedback. I get the idea that you want a separation, you want the calendar separate from the annual, but how can you write in this? I don't know. I personally couldn't. Now, if it was maybe a paperback or a daily calendar that you just tear off or whatever, that's fine. Like, that seems more disposable than this. I just wouldn't want to write in this book regardless. But that's just Beef Daddy. You could do whatever you want. You would. So that was kind of made clear to me as I sat and I flipped through these. If I were to buy, which I'm like probably going to get the next annual, which goes on sale in November. The theme is The Shining. I'll probably just get the annual. That's what I'm thinking, because I'd want all the fun things, all the bells and whistles, all the articles. And as a fun thing, he also sent along the Stephen King calendar for 2025, as well as the annual. Now, the annual for 2025 had a dust jacket. I don't know if 2026 had a dust jacket and he just didn't send it to me, if that's a whole different edition, but I so dig this. This, if you're not aware, This is Stephen King as Blaine the Mono. Blaine the Mono in Dark Tower 3, The Wastelands, and Dark Tower 4. You know, there's that cliffhanger in Dark Tower 3. The theme for 2025 was Stephen King on tour. And so, to give you a sense of what that looks like, they show old posters, old reproduced posters from events he was holding with tickets and such. I've seen him a total of twice. Once for a Bag of Bones signing, and once with his son for Sleeping Beauties, and got signed copies both times. Here's some cool. So there's an ad for The End of the World as We Know It with 4 alternative dust jackets available. Now, I have 2 copies of The End of the World as We Know It, signed by Josh Mallerman, Jonathan Jans, and another copy signed by Bev Vincent and Joe Lansdale. So I might be on the market for another cover for the second copy or so. Who knows? But I think that's a cool thing to have. And again, I see some familiar names: Bev Vincent, Kevin Quigley, Hans Ake Lila. I don't know how to say. I never knew how to say his name. I know who he is. Lila's Library or Lisia's Library. I don't really know how to pronounce it, and apologies. But he's a big deal in the Stephen King collector community. And we also have Alex Berman and Diana Petroff and Noah Mitchell again. And I got to say, this Alex Berman article is just screaming for me to read. I've talked with the man. He's an awesome guy, very generous dude, and he published Third Rule of Time Travel from Phil Fracassi. If you don't have that book, I suggest you go over to Fantasia Press and get it right now. Stellar dude, and a real King heavyweight, because he's the first publisher in the world to do a Stephen King limited edition, I believe. You could fact check me, but Fantasia Press did an edition of Firestarter. And it's the first edition of Firestarter, and it's a hugely collectible book now. And he had that honor. And he's going to be coming out with Dreamcatcher as well. So stay tuned for that. But that's a side note. Anyway, again, looking through both of these, I see where the overlap is. Now, I could say you could just get the calendar. If you like a daily planner and you're a Stephen King fan and you're like, I just want the calendar to write in, then I would get both for sure. If you're going to soil one with your scribblings, then don't do it to the annual. And I think these things are just picking up steam. In 2027, like I said, there's going to be a Stephen King annual with the theme of The Shining. And that's like, what, the 50th anniversary of that book. It's a big deal. And if you want to go in the past and get the previous annuals, because I will say the facts and trivia and articles give these calendars and annuals value well beyond the calendar year that they represent. It is a celebration of it and a calendar. You know what I mean? So you don't have to say, well, those years have gone by. There's no need. There's no need to get these, because I can't write my appointments for like the alien parasite that's attached to the back of my neck and keeps feeding me the directives to burn down, government buildings or whatever. You don't, that appointment happened in the past, so you don't need to write it down. But you might want to know what happened on the set of The Stand, for example. I don't know if that's actually in the annual. The previous calendars were The Stand, Stephen King Goes to the Movies, and The Green Mile. Where they made the transition and they went from just calendar to annuals, the previous ones were for Creepshow, The Mist, and as I shared with you, Stephen King on Tour. Creepshow and Mist just have annuals. They didn't split the calendar out, but Stephen King on Tour split the calendar out. I'm giving you a lot more information than you need probably. But if any of these subject themes appeal to you, you could probably go back and find them. I make no promises. Check out Overlook Connection Press. I'll have a link in the description, and then you check out the secondaries. But as I shared with you today, you get a sense of what these things are, and I got lost in them for quite a while, just thumbing through, catching up. I felt like I was 18, 17 years old again, and I used to get the heavy metal magazines too, and you're kind of lost in that world. You're lost in your own fandom, and it's a lot of fun. I miss it. I do. I miss the days of the magazine flipping and the trivia and the insights. And sometimes a guy just needs a nudge, you know? And I think next time I see these available or offered, I'm probably going to get The Shining. Probably going to have to, because this was a lot of fun. And I have a lot of things to thumb through in these, especially the tour one. I didn't really look at the Stephen King on tour one all that much, but it's great. It's a lot of fun. Thank you, Dave, for sending these to me and showing me the error of my ways of just sort of blindly passing on things. And there's a lot of great stuff over there at Overlook Connection Press, especially for Stephen King fans. I imagine if you're not a Stephen King fan, that is not a place you want to go. So I'll just say that. Yeah, just avoid that place if you don't like Stephen King. But if you do, you can go deep and go wide and go crazy. That's all I got for right now. Thank you for joining me this time. I hope to see you again next time. And in the meantime, stay frosty.